Everybody, I'm super excited for you all to meet Spence. He's the growth manager at BYLT Basics. If you're not familiar, a premium basics brand known for their versatile, high quality apparel. He runs their paid marketing across basically all the channels. So Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and TikTok. But his background in growth marketing also runs with previous clients like Snapchat, Pinterest, Instacart, Walmart, MyFitnessPal. So everybody, like you're in for a really big treat in what we're going to be talking about today, okay? Fantastic. Spencer, I think this is the perfect layup that you gave me, though, talking about BFCM. All the growth marketers have been feeling it. Just to kick us off nice and easy with an icebreaker here, like how was your BFCM? How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, we're super stoked. We had definitely historical goals. We hit them all. One thing though, like that win, we celebrated it. We loved it. But now we're just like, all right, we got to make December work. Because we're thinking since this is our minds are already moved on. So like we're already thinking like, okay, Thanksgiving was a week later this year. So everybody who usually buys later got paired up with everyone who buys during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We saw historical sales across the entire industry. So now we're like, holy crap, do we pull all the demand out of December?
Yeah.
What can we do now to actually hit these targets and hit our goal for the rest of the year? Because we still have some pretty big targets up until shipping cutoff and Q5. So there's still a lot of sales to be made. But yeah, Black Friday, Cyber Monday was a movie. We were stoked.
This is why I sincerely appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy it is at this point. And like everyone in the chat, same with you all for attending with us. We know how busy it is. So really, really appreciate you all for being here today. Okay. Sweet. So Spence, we're talking about a flywheel today. So everyone in the chat, one of the things I will call out is at Motion, we've evangelized what we call the creative strategy flywheel. If you follow these steps, you output the best creative. But the coolest thing ever is when I first started talking to Spence, like he had his own variation of this that he started creating here. So this is what we're going to be chatting through today. And everyone, I'm hoping you get some really cool tidbits that you can literally walk away with and have some ideas around what we can do. Okay. So I think like Spencer, with this in mind, what's the best way to start here? We can jump into these buckets or you can give like the high level. What even prompted you to think about needing to create a flywheel for how you're thinking about creative strategy?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question to start with. Just like the reason we built it in the first place. And like I built it with a ton of super smart people at Built. And we're in this group at Meta called Disruptors, which I'm super lucky to be in. We have like the most awesome reps there. Shout out Andrew and Raghu that are constantly giving us all this back end data, all these great insights. And they're pretty much showing us before the summer that was like, hey, like your guys' rolling reach is flat, which basically had told us that we're not hitting any new people. We're hitting people that maybe haven't purchased from us, but we're hitting the same people over and over again. And like, yeah, we're spending money, but like, we're not hitting the whole United States to buy these premium basics or every dude. So we were just like, what can we do to increase the rolling reach? And they were like, creative diversity, creative volume. So that was the first thing to say, okay, how do we get diversity and how do we do it at scale? Because it's really easy to do this creative diversity thing one time, 1 month, everybody works 24/7 for 1 week straight. And then, yeah, it's done. But then the ads get fatigued in 2 weeks. So that my part was kind of like, how can we keep this going over and over and over again? Because we have such a talented team here at Built who's super passionate about the clothes, about the products, about the brand, and even about the creative. We have a huge creative team. So that prompted us, me and our paid specialist who just got promoted to creative performance manager, Tyler, to build
Shout out
Flywheel.
Tyler.
Yeah. Tyler's killing it. So Tyler's really managing this flywheel at this point. But yeah, we definitely needed to build this in order to keep up.
I love it. I love it. So we know that creative diversity becomes important. And then the question was like, how did you start to build this thing out? And everybody, you can see the labels that start to surround this piece of like where to start and where it ultimately goes to launch. So I think, Spencer, just to set the stage now, getting into the weeds, we have steps 1 and 2 being weekly performance and historical trends. So what's happening as you start to kick off this process with the team?
Yeah, so this is really like where I'll function the most is like the growth manager is kind of in this weekly analysis and like historical performance that then informs the whole team to start trickling around this flywheel. And basically what it does is I'll go into motion. So without motion, I couldn't do this. And a little backstory, and I told you this, Evan, already. I worked at a cannabis company for 4 years called Weed Maps. And at that time I was buying a bunch of programmatic ads and I was building out these crazy pivot tables. And just to build these pivot tables would take me like 3 hours. And I was building these out like twice a week. And then once I came to BYLT, they were like, yeah, we just signed on this SaaS company called Motion. We haven't really used it a ton yet. Like we have it though. It's awesome. And I was like, wait, you just eliminated pivot tables. Like this is my favorite SaaS company on the planet. And that's why I was always hitting you up, Evan. I was just like, dude, this company is legit. So basically it all starts in Motion, and I have Meta, TikTok, and YouTube all piped in there. And from there, I pipe in my multi-touch attribution tool. So from there, I can see not just the in-platform metrics that are going to soak up all that attribution that you know that they're just going to take no matter what, which is still good directionally if you just have your platform metrics. But I also have my multi-touch attribution tool. So I'm able to see all of that side by side for whatever I want to look at. So I'm basically looking at the CPAs in platform and in Northbeam, the CTRs, the ROAS, the sustain rate, the thumb stop rate, the percentage of new visitors. I'm sorting it by spend so I can see volume. And then from there, I can break it out by every campaign, every ad set. I could break it out by all these different variables that I'll talk about later in the naming conventions, which is one of the first things that I did at BYLT when I got here to make sure that we can actually break out what's working in these ads. Because one of the biggest problems with making, call it 300 ads for a sales week, like how do you fit those into your campaigns, right? Like, and Motion helped me cut at a very fast rate. So being able to have all those charts, like you can ask Kira for Motion in there, like we have like 100 dashboards, and it's so we can cut super fast because I need to be able to make room for all the new stuff to come in while my disruptor reps are telling me like, hey, we're seeing ad fatigue this week. Hey, we're seeing it slip here and there. It's like, cool, I need to cut and get new ones in. But without Motion on that weekly performance, I can't do that. So that's the first step of the bucket.
Fantastic. I love the words and the goal of being able to cut, because it's equally as important to know what's working, but also what's not, to be able to make those decisions. And then just curious on the historical trends front there, is there any specific, like any additional tasks that are happening on top of being able to look at the weekly on what's happened there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So weekly is going to tell me what's working and what's not right now. What can we lean into? What do we need to move away from? And then historical is going to help me with seasonality. So like that one I'm going to do on a monthly basis. I'm not doing that one every single week because there might not always be a seasonality adjustment needed. But like say for Black Friday or even the weeks leading up to it or the week after Black Friday, I will look and see what did we spend the most on the year before? What had the highest click-through rate? What had the lowest CPA? What didn't work? What worked? And then all of those two buckets are getting shipped out to our teams. So like from our coordinators to our directors across product, across brand, across design, across video, across production, everybody knows what's working and what's not. There's no excuse of like, oh, I didn't know that didn't work, right? It's like, no, everybody knows. So everybody can start training that muscle that we all know here to be like, what do we need to lean into and what do we need to lean away from, so that when Tyler's creating these briefs that we'll talk about in a second, the team can already know like what we need and what we don't.
100%. And this is the interesting part, because it's like, this is your data. So historically speaking, like what are we looking at to then decide what we do next? But in this third step here, the inspo, I think this is where the magic starts to happen. So from what I've heard, you and the team ultimately start building out some incredible new concepts, and no one's really touching you on the new concepts. Like that's where it's like creative diversity to the max to get to the right audiences. So when we're talking about that inspo sheet there, like talk us through it. What does it look like? What are you going through?
Yeah, so this is where we kind of use this buzzword, which I'll talk about even more on the next one, but it's diversity buckets. So it's kind of like, where do we have our diversity buckets that we then can plug and play product into? Because we have a huge product list. We're a high SKU company. So it's a little bit different for us that, even if we have ads that are killing it, I'm hitting targets, we're all happy, right? They can hit me up and be like, hey, Spence, this one jacket, we're not moving, right? So then it's like, cool, what buckets do I now plug and play this into? Where do the heroes now sit? But this part is a team effort. So like this one, like I can't take any credit for. This is like everybody in the building is doing this. And this is coming through like LinkedIn, Slack. We're all in a group chat on Instagram. And it's not even just paid content. It's it's organic content. It's just things that we're seeing on LinkedIn. Sometimes, Evan, it's stuff that you're posting. It's different things that we're all seeing, and we're piecing together from Pinterest. And it's still that positive and negative, right? It's not just what's working, we should try it, or what do we see that we like, we should try it. It's stuff that's like, hey, we see this on a paid media sponsored posts, like we shouldn't do this. Like our competitors are doing this, right? So there's times where like when I'm sitting here and I'm on Instagram and I'm looking through everything, and I'm obviously very tapped into seeing like all these creatives everywhere. I'm ultimately like just seeing a sea of sameness right now. So it's kind of like, how do we pull out of that sea of sameness and we can actually hit people? And then in those diversity buckets, it's like, that's how the rolling reach starts to expand. So it's like, if we were just running the same ads all the time, like a GIF of a certain shirt going in a circle with one type of dude, it's like, we're only going to hit one type of dude. The algorithm now is going to see if we have 10 different ambassadors across 10 different statics and 10 different videos, it's going to start splitting out and trying to hit all different types of people. But all this inspo basically gets shipped around and starts to get prioritized, right? It starts to live in different areas, and then we start to have a huge brainstorm. So from the coordinator all the way up to directors are in there going through slides that Tyler will then put together and basically just be like, what do we like? What do we don't as a group? And we all talk through it on like pretty much a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Are there any examples here of like that we could show the audience of like, where does this go to live? Is it literally just in your minds as you're going through it? Are you then tracking it somewhere specifically? Is there anything we can share with the audience?
It's in a for sure. And we'll bucket it by like the source. So like, where did we find it at? And what do we like about it? And then what are the categories? Like whether it's a hi-fi slow motion, whether it's a lo-fi, whether it's UGC, whether it's high production storytelling, the details, and it's very loose. So we start low, and like, just for example, like one of our production managers, he was like, hey Spence, like I want to shoot this one shot where we hang a jacket and like we put some wind on it and we do like a calm app style music. And I was like, oh, whatever, let's do it. And I'm like on the ground fanning it and like doing this stuff, right? And we kind of jokingly posted it. It was like our top 5 performer for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And like we were joking about it, you know, and it was like this like slow-mo, like it took us 30 minutes to make, and it was the simplest thing, cheap, you know, we didn't even spend any money on it. But it was just kind of like part of that process of just anybody brings the inspo to the table. We have it all tracked in these different channels, and then it gets put into Asana when we all agree on what it should be part of going into concepting next. Super important to have everybody's ideas out there and just kind of making the shift to being like, this is a creative company now. This is a marketing creative company, is like kind of like where we shifted our minds to.
Yeah. Especially hearing from the Disruptors group. And I'm just wondering, like, as you are going through the inspo stuff, is there a place that you'll start? So what I mean by that is like, there's a version of going out into the world and like finding all these different examples and saying, hey team, like, let's talk about them. And then that brainstorm happens. And there's another version of like, okay, everyone go find things, and this is how you organize it. These are the buckets that you're throwing them into. What's that process to basically organize the creative chaos? Is that the Asana step that's happening there?
Yeah. So the easiest way that we're going to find like direct inspo is going to be from those same things. Like your guys' new creative research tool is so much nicer than the ads library because you can actually save it to a certain board. You know what I mean? Even our own creatives, we can save them to a certain board. But it still always goes back to, it lives in Asana. It lives in a deck that we all go over. We all add to this deck. We all go to the brainstorm meeting. But yeah, ultimately it's the same thing. Like the sea of sameness we're trying to avoid. We don't want to just directly copy or rip, but it's for sure like, oh, this looks interesting. Like how can we put our own built flair on it? How can we make it look different than this ad? But still, we do like what we're seeing here, whether it's the music, whether it's the model, whatever it can be, you know, and I think, it all lives in that Asana board directly.
Got you. Okay, so we've gone through the inspiration step to be able to build out or just brainstorm around like what's going on there. Then the next piece is getting into the concepting side. So when you are thinking about concepting, how does that differ from the inspo step?
So how it differs is this is like, it's going to now be close to a brief. So this is right before it becomes the brief. And once again, got a shout out Tyler here. This is where the diversity buckets really come to play. And we kind of have like our 10 hero diversity buckets, right? We're like, we know these hit. We just have to switch them up, whether it's messaging, whether it's the product, whether it's the colors, whatever it is, like we know this works. Like we are sticking to this. This is where our products that are maybe low on or high on inventory that we have to move are going to go into next week. And then we have our sea of new ads. So it's like, okay, these are the ones that like we want to try. And we're usually going to try to put a hero product there first because we know the hero products already move They already get good engagement. It's an easier product to sell a pant and a shirt than like some puffer jacket. You know what I mean? So the new stuff is going to usually have a hero product involved with it. And then from here, to get those diversity buckets that are new, everybody's still pitching in. So yeah, we have our design and creative teams that are working super fast. Like our favorite thing to say right now is speed kills. It's kind of like a joke that we all say in the office. Like we say speed kills, and like we all send around like American traditional tattoos of like speed, like the speed kills tattoos. But then we even have like our brand director and our production organizing these creative teams. Like, hey, here are the concepts that Tyler just wrote in these briefs. Now this is how we're going to go from point A to B. We have our social media manager filming lo-fi content on the phone. We have even agencies. So we have agencies that are coming with other ideas that like we wouldn't even think about, like international, UGC, and then our ambassadors. So we have a deep list of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 ambassadors that like we're giving them some direction, we're giving them the product, but like we're letting them be their authentic selves and also add to their own diversity bucket in there so that we're hitting a broad range of it. And then from there, the concepting sheet, you would call it, is now also in Asana. But from there, it's like, here's the concept. Is it a press thing? Is it a customer testimonial? Is it bundles? What platforms do we need it for? Meta, TikTok, YouTube, just Meta. What formats? Is it video, static, GIF? What content type do we need? Is it going to be like studio, lifestyle, design? And then the actual creative direction of like, this is like in plain English, this is what we're looking forward to do. And then I'm in office right now. So we're all here, all shooting back here in the studio really fast, getting it edited and then launching it. So it's all happening in real time here.
Huge, huge. It's so interesting because it feels like to really have a company that's creative first, what you've done is empowered every individual to feel heard and like be able to test whatever they want in this process, right? Like I don't know if everyone is always included depending on the company. It's like a couple people who will then turn people into pencil pushers of what they have to do. So like that's a really cool, it's a really interesting piece of being able to build it out that way.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I heard yesterday, and I don't know if this is true, so don't fact check me, but I heard that the Spotify Wrapped was invented by an intern.
You know, I think I heard the same thing too. We need someone in the chat to verify. We need someone in the chat to verify.
I was like, that's crazy. Like, I hope she got a crazy bonus.
Probably not, but we might get onion news. Okay. I think she evolved the concept. Okay, awesome. So it's not just fake news. We're hearing the real. We're hearing the real. Spence, I know there was a deck that I was looking at. Is it okay if I share my screen to just like look at an example and just show the people like some of the stuff you've been talking about here?
Yeah, I think you guys wanted to show the Inspo one potentially.
Okay. So just to put some visuals behind what Spence has been talking about here. So the inspo sheet and then the concepting sheet and what are the words.
These are super, super light versions of it. Like they definitely live in Asana. So like this is kind of like when we were building out the flywheel of kind of like this is how it should look. But in Asana, it's just way more efficient because you're able to move through or whatever you guys use, whether it's Monday or Jira or whatever else. But I think just building a system within each of those is what's going to work best for you guys to move through that flow. But just really jotting everything out so everybody's really clear. I mean, the better the brief is and the better it's tracked, the faster it moves. And so that's kind of the thing. Like we're doing this on a weekly basis. So it's not just like one and done for a sale. It's like, no, like we're just always keeping this going. Like we're just always making new creative, always keeping fatigue low at this point, and always cutting fast and swapping them in. So whatever is going to work fastest for your team and whatever information is going to make that flow go faster, or with your partners or your agencies, that's how I'd recommend to do it.
I love it. And with this process, I think I know the answer here, but because there's so many people who are involved in the inspo and concepting step, is it Tyler driving and bringing everyone together that then would output a brief of sorts? So yeah, Tyler would drive basically bringing everyone's ideas together and then putting them into concepting, then to briefing them. And then from there, our brand director, production manager, they're going to go shoot everything and really bring the creative and design teams together, filmers, editors, producers, stylists, everybody together, ambassadors, all that sourcing, and then really make sure that it all comes to life at the very end. And then also we, as we go through that flywheel, if you go back to the flywheel slide,
that's where we ultimately get all the way to, I can't see that close. Let me double check real quick. That's where we're going to get to like the design template, which is ultimately, I would call that like briefing. So that's where that one goes through. And then from there, from that briefing template, we have a central copy sheet. And on that copy sheet is where we're sharing everything that's going to go into whatever drop, sprint, seasonal tentpole moment it's going to be. And then it stays cohesive across everything. So every team is going to have access to this copy sheet, whether it's going to go across Google, email, TikTok, YouTube, TV. Everything's going to stay cohesive in there. And then the last piece is that naming convention. So that naming convention, this one could kind of live anywhere in this process, but I like to kind of put it right before launch because this is where all the magic happens that lays the foundation for motion. So without this naming convention, I can't build out anything. And back in my weed maps days, it had to be very structured across one single line. Because if it wasn't, then I couldn't make the right pivot tables to stay in those columns. But with motion, you're just sourcing a name. So you can make it really in any line. But from there, I'm able to track. One of the biggest things is just static versus video, super easy. I can see what that ratio looks like. And if I'm in a healthy place, certain weeks when performance is really bad, it's kind of one of the first things I'll look at. I'll look and see like if CPMs are off or CTRs are off, like what's my static versus video ratio? And I can look at that really easy. I can see what featured products are getting the most spend. If someone's like, hey, like we're spending way too much on DC Lux, I can go fact check that real quick. Like featured collections, the content type. So I can see studio versus lifestyle versus just design. And even from those, at this point, because of motion, I know kind of what ratios are really healthy for us. And if it ever gets out of line and starts leaning one way or the other, then I know that, we got to shift back to say more lifestyle or more studio. And then we just have miscellaneous, like whatever we want to test. So is it going to be like hanging versus flats? Is it going to be what hook 1 versus hook 2? What models? Then we have models that I can aggregate a full model list and see, but it all starts with that naming convention.
The way that you know this stuff like the back of your hand is so impressive. Sometimes it's just like, holy crap, like all of this allows you to launch like thousands of creatives and make it come to life. I think the follow-up question that I have is if we bring it back to the design and the copy sheet here, my question is there anything specific with brands, with briefs that has basically allowed you to have more speed? Because usually that translation of like, this is the ask into this is the task isn't super clean. So curious if there's anything that empowers you to go faster there.
I mean, it's all about priority. Like we're still somewhat of a lean team, but depending upon if it's a drop or it's a sale or it's a certain ambassador, like we're going to prioritize that and get it out. And then also performance, like if performance is looking tough one week or it's looking like, if it's looking tough, like, yeah, we're going to move faster as a team. Like we just have to, and it's going to get prioritized between what's the most low hanging fruit. And that's usually going to be those business as usual buckets that we know that work, right? So like those 10 buckets that we know are going to work for us, like let's get our core products in there, let's refresh it, and let's get it live tonight. So I would say just like prioritizing within Asana and based on performance is what kind of gets the team moving quickly. Of course, we have our queue is always backed up. It's always backed up, but Tyler's always making sure, with obviously meeting with our director and other people, like how are we going to actually bucket these things by priority? And where does it move in that ladder?
Huge. No, that makes a ton of sense. And then as we get to that naming convention step there, I guess the question that I'd be curious and the audience might assume or be wondering about are best practices. Like as you've gone through this process and launched so many creatives, are there just some non-negotiables to have in your naming?
I mean, yeah, it's the same buckets. Like when I first got to build, the naming convention wasn't the cleanest. Like they still could build it out in motion, and like you could not have a strong naming convention and still be fine in motion, right? But it's just not as easy to move things around and be able to see what's working as fast. You really have to remember like a whole like add 20. What were all the syntaxes in add 20 that I have to remember? But the non-negotiables for me, first off, is an ad number because I have to find it super fast. And if I want to kill things or add more on, if it's where it's trafficking to, so what's the landing page? The product has to be involved in there because it allows me and the whole team upstairs to be able to see how much I'm spending on certain products to see if I'm actually yielding a strong contribution margin for that product and if I need to pull back or if I need to spend more. And we check that year over year too. So that's something else that I'm seeing year over year. like, dang, last year they spent like 200% more on this type of pant. Like, why'd they do that? Should I be doing that? So that's a non-negotiable. Collection pages, the content type. So for me, like I had mentioned, studio versus lifestyle versus design. That really helps me keep ratios in line with what's working and like who these ads are getting sent out to. The format, so static versus video, versus GIF versus slideshow. That's another one that I just want to know how much I'm spending on each one at any given time. And then we have hooks. So like if it's a video, like I want to have the hook on it. Like we all know that like those first 3 seconds are so important, that I just have to know what's the hook on any video that we put out there. And then we have, this one's not a non-negotiable. We have like a miscellaneous tab, and that one is just for like anything that's unique about the ad that we want to learn.
Huge. And I think these are just the examples here, but going back to the flywheel. So that takes us to launch. And at the stage of launch, the biggest question starts to become, how do you deploy creative in a way that lets you get the insights? And I think like there's some account structure conversations that pop up at this point.
Sorry, can you repeat that one real quick, Evan?
So for this one on the launch end, just wondering like when you are deploying the media on platform, if there's specific structures, like an account structure that you follow, like do you run a creative testing campaign? Do you just like duplicate your ad sets? Like how are you going to market with the assets?
So yeah, this is a bigger, broader question for sure. That like there's no one size fits all for this one. But the launch side of it more has what's my cadence of cutting ads. So like for me, it's like 2 to 3 days a week. For some people, that should be less. For others, that should be more. If anything looks like horrible, I'm in there every day. I'm in motion every day. So if anything looks horrible, I'm going to like just straight, cut it right away. But I try to make sure there's enough volume, so spend and impressions on there for me to actually make that decision. Like I'm only really worrying about that top 30% of ads where I'm cutting, because you think about the opportunity cost of all these other ads not getting spent. If you're an ASC and there's 25 ads in there and, only 5 of them are getting ads, but like they are getting spent and they look decent, I'm always thinking about that opportunity cost of not hitting all these other ads that are going to diversify out to net new customers. And then part of that launch is like, what nights do I traffic? So what nights am I going to do what I would call a small flip and a big flip? And a small flip would be just like, let's just get some stuff out there that I need to get spend behind product wise. And then a big flip, like, hey, performance has been slowing down, ad fatigue is getting high. We're going to do a big flip right here. And then back to your first question of like, how do you deploy it? Every campaign that I have and every ad set that I have at BYLT is super specific and has a specific need and a reduction in overlap. So like there's no overlap there, and they have very specific needs. So those ads that fit that need go directly into those campaigns. And then we also have a creative testing campaign that's always on, so that we're always testing, just any variable that I just talked about. Like we could just only move one variable at a time and do these small mini tests that are just constantly going on, that our coordinator is always logging and reporting back to us and the rest of the team too.
So we've talked a lot about like the individual details of how the flywheel starts to come to life. And I think questions, if they are there, get them to the Q&A tab. We're going to get to Q&A really soon here. I have a couple follow-ups just about this thing holistically. So the first question I have is just around like team structures. So we've talked about Tyler a ton and then mentioned some individuals here and there. So when we look at this flywheel here, what does the team look like that allows you to execute in a way that you're happy?
No, that's a great question. I hope I don't forget anybody. But yeah, Tyler is really running this engine. So he's driving the car, moving it all along. But we also have, we have a brand director and brand coordinator that are really making sure all the tentpole moments are there and everything is being moved along as well. We have a sports marketing manager who's overseeing, a ton of different athletes. We have a social media manager who's making a bunch of lo-fi content. We have a producer who's then sourcing all these models and all the locations. We have a stylist. We have a photographer. We have a photographer assistant. We have multiple designers, multiple videographers and editors. And then I think Tyler's even writing a lot of the copy still. So it's not a massive team, but it's a really talented team that all works really well together. And it definitely took time for us all to have this level of chemistry, but we've been talking about just like how the team right now just has like such good chemistry on everyone's role and what we need to be doing to be making best in class content and best in class at scale. Cause we always talk about like, it's not just scale, right? You can make, if it's just scale of a bunch of bad stuff, like you're not going to see the results. And even ad fatigue doesn't always mean bad performance, right? So there's certain times that, you know, me and my reps will talk about like, oh, this has ad fatigue, but it's performing well. Like we're going to keep it live. Like if you were just switching terrible ads every day and had low fatigue, you still wouldn't get sales. So it's meeting that quality with scale. And then even talking about like the first line of defense is like, would you click on that? Like, that's what I always ask. I've always asked that in my career to anybody I've worked with and myself daily. It's just like, would I click on that? And if it's like, no, I wouldn't, like, we're going to think about it again. Right. Cause it might not be like up to standards. Like we don't want to just check boxes to check boxes.
We're humans at the end of the day. It's like we need to feel something. This has to make us we want to click, like make it come to life, right? So that's the small but mighty team that makes this come to life. And I think the question I have here is Tyler is the one who is driving, but I'm curious if everybody you had mentioned is equally involved in each of these steps to get the context, or are there places where individuals will shine and spend a lot more time?
I mean, yeah, everybody's in this whole system, but yeah, definitely like weekly performance and historical trends. That's like where I'm owning the most right now to trickle it down. And Tyler's in there as well. And so is our coordinator, you know, and then when we get to Inspo and creative and the design template, that's where Tyler's really shining and he's really holding it down. But the whole team is also adding stuff in there, also, you know, driving that as well and making it come to life. You know, one of the things in here that isn't added is like when we actually make the stuff, right? So like I can come up with ideas all day and show data, but like I don't know how to go shoot this stuff and actually make it happen, right? So like all the actual magic that's happening, that's the whole team at BYLT that's doing it. And even our product, that's the other thing too. Like the product team, like people love our stuff. So like that just makes my job easier. And even like our product team upstairs, they're the reason we got Mike Tyson we got built on the short with Mike Tyson, which definitely made my job easy, right? I can't sit here and take all the credit for Black Friday when the whole like world just saw our logo on Mike Tyson's short.
How did that even come to life? Like, I think I was going to ask you later, but like, how the heck did that even happen?
That's like another hour podcast for how that all went down. And, you know, I think one of the big testaments to like, and this might not even be the diversity thing, maybe it is, but having people like these just massive moments, Mike Tyson, Gronk, Alex Albon from F1, like a lot of them are just fans of the brand. Like that's how it starts. They're fans of the brand. They love our head of product. And, you know, one thing comes to another and, you know, they want to cut a deal with us and put us on the short. And that just was like, the fight was supposed to happen in the summer, but, you know, Mike obviously had a medical issue, which we were like, oh, it might not happen. And then when they announced that it was going to happen November 15th, we were all like, light bulb, like that's right before Black Friday. Let's make sure we have this engine ready to go. So if you're going to have these big moments or you're going to pay for CTV and have commercials, like, yeah, you might not see all the sales that day, right? And management, finance isn't going to be happy in that moment. But if you have this flywheel ready to go and push everyone through that funnel, it's going to be awesome.
100%. Oh my gosh. The way that just lined up perfectly to just like capitalize on the opportunity. Nuts, man.
Yeah, we just needed to have good creatives ready to go and to spend on socials and D2C in order to push all that awareness through. But yeah, I'm a big fan of upper funnel spend right now.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Last question before we get over to the Q&A is just around the speed. So each of those different modules are like the nodes that we saw on the flywheel. What I'm curious about are just like SLAs. Are there any agreements that you have across the teams to be able to say, like, we want to make sure we get through X amount of steps by X date?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like hard SLA dates on every side of the bucket. Like I said, you can kind of jump in, like you could have started anywhere in that bucket, that flywheel. That's why it's in the wheel, right? It's not in that straight line down. Like you could start anywhere in that wheel and get it going, right? But yeah, if there's a due date in Asana for something like, and it doesn't get hit, like we're asking why, you know, like our team is like definitely passionate. We're all competitive. We're all trying to figure it out. But I would say the biggest thing is just like, make sure there's a due date and that you're getting it done.
Does it happen often where like a due date will be missed?
It depends. It depends on what it is, on who you're asking and who needs what, right? Like obviously
Sure.
somebody wants their lo-fi done because they want that to get tested. Somebody wants ambassadors done. Okay, now head of products coming down saying, hey, you need to make this Mike Tyson commercial. Everyone's like, all right, now Mike Tyson's going. So now another debate, but it's all about prioritizing in that Asana chart, like what is the most important today, right now, to hit our goals for now and the rest of the month or the rest of the year, right? So like it depends who you ask of who's missing deadlines. But yeah, deadlines, we're human. Deadlines get missed. We're not
Yeah.
perfect.
But I think like you even gave insight into the why. So it's like when bigger things pop up, at least you can see it all in Asana to be able to say like, truly, everyone, do we agree that this is now the priority? It's like, yes, now we can all make sure that we're behind it and make decisions together.
Yep.
Okay, everybody, get into the Q&A. Keep upvoting what we have going on. I'm going to start picking out some questions, bringing them on stage here. So the first one that I wanted to bring up is from Celia. If I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, please let me know in the chat. But the question is how do you still ensure your brand is consistent while prioritizing creative diversity?
I'm super happy you asked this because I forgot one person in our stack. We have an art director and he's awesome. So he really makes sure that everything looks legit and gets signed off. And he basically oversees our design team. And also our videographer is awesome. And he works under our brand director. So between the brand director, the producer I've mentioned, and then the art director, they're making sure everything's on brand within the book. And that's not to mention we get a little funky sometimes, with the agencies bringing over UGC and international stuff. And that kind of comes down to a game time decision where it's like, do we want to do this? Is it on brand? Is it worth the risk? Usually it's a yes. But as we get bigger next year and as we have these tier one partnerships, we definitely want to ensure that the brand is prioritized. But we're still we're kind of right on the verge of we're still that scrappy D2C brand getting sales online to now we have 6 retail stores. Now we have tier one athletes. But it's a great question.
And Spencer, does everybody in the organization feel that need to keep the brand consistent? Or there's some people who are fighting against it, being like, well, if it gets a sales, it gets a sales.
No, everyone's pretty on with keeping the brand. We all see the bigger vision. We all see it. We all know that we have to be legit. We can't just be making we can't be making memes. You know what I mean? We're never doing that. And not to say that that's not on brand for someone else. We're a premium basics brand that's meant for that 35 to 55-year-old male. We have women's now too. That's actually growing really, really fast, but it's the dude that's finance, real estate, tech, works out, humble go-getter, just wants to put something on that's clean and looks like it fits nice. And so we got to make sure that we're always sticking into that sophisticated, elegant style ad at the end of the day.
I love it. There's so many things that you've spoken to today that are just culturally at the company. It's we embody this. It's we know we need to be fast. We know we need creative diversity. We know we need the brand. It's culturally important to everybody, which is so cool. Next question that I see in here is from Kate. So it's still along the lines of the creative side. So speaking from an in-house perspective, is the creative team for paid assets dedicated, or are they designing and creating for any other channels or even campaigns? That is the hurdle that often trips up the volume needed in paid search, organic, etc. Curious of any unlocks for multi-channel supporting creative teams. So I think it's do you have a dedicated paid social resource, or are they building for all campaigns across all channels?
So that's a great question too. It's very unique for us because paid channels drive a bunch of our revenue. So for us, paid channels is kind of that, I wouldn't say be all end all, but it is the priority. And that's always going to take the biggest bulk of our flywheel. Based on what your flywheel would look like, I would still bake in that share of wallet of where are you getting your revenue from. If it's organic or it's TikTok, your flywheel should be more dedicated towards TikTok, and then your priority in Asana should always dedicate TikTok, right? Of course, you still have Instagram, you probably still have YouTube. You may have other channels as well that are, Amazon, whatever it may be. But for us, when we first built that flywheel, we hired 2 more people because we were holy crap, we actually can't hit this goal that we have set out if we don't hire another editor and an assistant photographer. If we don't hire these 2 people, then it doesn't work for us. So I think building the flywheel in general will help you even figure out what is our output capacity needed.
So speaking to your output capacity, it's you've been operating in a world where it's you have ton of creative you go live with. This is where we need your advice. So Jack has a question. How would you go about creative diversity with temporarily having limited creative assets?
So this one I would just get scrappy. Like I said, our social media manager, she's crushed it this year just by making lo-fi ads on an iPhone. And then through CapCut, she edits them. And those have been an easy way for us to find diversity in a low cost way, or like even just going out and like we shot that hanging jacket that with the call map sound on it, right? There's ways to, you don't need to be hi-fi as much as you think. Like Tyler and I will sit there and be like, this is the ad. Like this is the one, like I'm so stoked on it. This ad, this one's not that good. Like we'll have to talk to this designer later about it, but let's get it live. And then that ad that we were going to go have a talking with someone about is our number one ad that took a second to make. So I would just get really scrappy if you have limited creatives. You don't need to have the massive team. Obviously, I'm very lucky to have it, but without it, I would just be shooting a ton of lo-fi, a ton of UGC. I would be in that creative research tool on Motion, looking around at things that fit your brand that you think maybe awesome, but like be careful with that too because of that sea of sameness, and also like you don't know if that thing worked. Like we see people rip our stuff sometimes where we're like that ad didn't even work. So you just want to be careful with that.
And what I can add to that one too is just like making sure that you have your backlog of ideas on top of research. So it's like if you know that you have this pain point you want to solve or this value prop you want to lean into, it makes it easier for you to then say, okay, I'll pick up my phone and just say those words and make it come to life. So there's ways to start to get scrappy with it for sure. Spence, the number one question, I think the answer is no, and I think that's okay, but I have to make the people happy because this is the one that has been upvoted the most, is from Alexander. Can we see how this looks like in your Asana board?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't fully
Sorry,
that one. There's just certain things that we have to protect here. But like I said, what works for us might not work for you, but still the theory of like, how do you set up your flywheel and your process? It's just test and repeat. Like even the first way that we set it up and how it's set up now is not what it's going to look like in 2 months. I can already guarantee that. It's constantly evolving by different team members, different goals, different needs, different things we're seeing in the platform, different trends. So I would just start with what you think is going to work best for you right now. But yeah, it's sorry. I wish I could show you guys the Asana, but I like my job. I can only get
So it's a good segue into the platforms though, like saying how they react differently and everything there. So David has the question is who is executing in these platforms?
So mostly me. Our paid coordinator builds the ads out. So she's building the ads out once the finals come in. So she's pulling from that copy sheet. She's pulling from all the final assets and she's building everything. And then I build it out in what I call an ad bank. And this is something that I actually forgot to even share. So we have a bank of ads. Like we're making so many ads. And one of the things when this first started happening was we couldn't figure out how to like track what was going live and what wasn't. Because we would just get so many ads live, then a new round of ads would be there. Then a new round would be there. Then a new round. Like these new rounds keep coming. We don't hit every single ad that we make. Believe it or not every ad that gets built gets live. So when I built this ad bank that pretty much prioritizes in color coding, like a color coding legend, our director always says, like, dude, I can't even read this thing. But you know, me and Tyler and Lauren can kind of see what we know what it means. But from there, that's where I plan out what ads am I cutting. So if I'm going through all my motion dashboards, this is what I'm cutting. This is what I'm trafficking. And then I'm going to go through and just see what products do I need, what buckets. And I'm going through there and just trying to pick as diverse of buckets and then slotting those ads from that ad bank into whatever campaign it's going to go. And then one other thing that we do here that is pretty unique is I make these changes at night. So between the hours of, it could be 9:30 or 12, depending upon the day. I'm going in there and I'm executing these changes, including budgets, including, cutting ads and adding ads across all platforms. So like my day usually consists of planning out what I'm going to do at night. So then at night I can go in there and get it all done in, 30 minutes to an hour, whatever it's going to take me to go in there, just so I don't disrupt the system. But yeah, I'm executing it all channel wide.
So interesting. Are there any other words you can say about like just so we don't disrupt the system?
Yeah, so basically it all depends on your level of spend, but the second that you make a change within the system, so if you're adding a creative, you're not really cutting won't disrupt it too much. So you can cut midday, but you add a creative midday, you adjust a budget down or up too much in a day, you're making the system relearn, which could kill your performance for the day. So for us, that could be big numbers in one day, and I missed my target just because I wanted to change something at 3 versus at night when everything's slowing down. It's worth the risk for me to go into learning mode. So that's something that I've been doing for my whole year here, is just doing this at night, and we've seen better performance from doing that.
And this is why that question of who is in platform is so good, because it's just like, well, this is how I actually make it come to life. The next one here is still talking to like understanding the analytics and the data behind it. So we have to get to a Kira question. So Kira's here in the audience. Kira says, how do you define fatigue and what do you look at to catch it?
So this one's awesome. I love it. It's usually going to come down. So if you're in motion, for me, it's going to come down to just general performance. So what I'm seeing across the board of CPAs, is it still spending into that ad? What's the CTR? And then what's the click to add to cart? And then I have a new percentage visitor one on there too. So I'll say the new percentage visitors. And as that goes down, that's another indicator to me. And then the one that's like Meta sends it to me. That's the other one. In Disruptors, they send me a chart and they'll just say, they won't tell me this ad is fatigued. They will say your account has fatigue. Here is our backend system to show you that your account is starting to fatigue a bit. But if performance is great, I'm like, okay, like I don't care too much. If performance is bad and I'm fatiguing, then I'm like, okay, let's do a big flip tonight.
Huge. Okay, so bringing it back to now the creative process here. I'm going to try and fit a couple more questions in, folks, but please upvote, because I think we have time for maybe 2 more. But Michael has a question. So is your entire team involved in the creative process? I believe we know the answer is yes. And then the other piece here is, are you creating landing pages for new products and uniforming the creative to it? Can you share the naming convention? Okay, so there's 3 separate ones in there, but the one we haven't addressed is, are you creating landing pages specifically for the creative initiatives that you're doing?
Yes, we are. Not every single thing, right? So a lot of the stuff is driving directly to a PDP. So we're a high SKU company. So if like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a product before that you loved, like from a certain brand, and you clicked on it, and it took you to a collection page and you just couldn't find that product. We're always driving to a PDP for the most part, or a collection page. But yeah, if we're running like a certain kit or a certain ambassador, we'll drive directly to a landing page for them. And then also we have used a tool called Vermont, where we were testing landing pages at scale that were more like listicle style things. That were awesome too. But yeah, we do have in our testing phase like a landing page test as well. But for the most part, it's not as big of a part as the flywheel as the creative diversity, but it's definitely something that we're aiming for. So like 2025, it's like our CRO, like we're just really trying to get our game up there for sure.
Another question that I see here, I'm trying to go rapid fire mode if we can, is from Christine. So Christine says, and you talked about it a little bit, but how do influencers fit into your mix and decision making?
So yeah, they're everything right now. And this is something else that Tyler manages right now, is what ambassadors work for us. One of our ambassadors, and he's probably like our tier 2 or tier 3. He was our biggest performer of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like we might've made him famous by how much money we put behind him. But it's a huge part of not only diversity, but hitting these audiences and gaining trust very quickly. Like our women's has moved so fast because of like the mom influencers that we've been working with, like Sean Johnson, for example, or Crystal Horton. Just certain moms that we've worked with have just absolutely killed it. But it's an absolutely massive part. And like something that I saw the other day on LinkedIn, which like would go right to our inspo, right? Like something I see on LinkedIn that like looks awesome, is it's like you could pay Kim Kardashian $1 million for 20 million views, or you can pay 1,000 influencers $1 million for 20 million views. But the difference is Kim Kardashian's one post could have 0.001 engagement, and then your influencers that are all micro could have 0.1%. So your reach is that much more and that much more trust. So that part of our business has grown so much. And I would say that's like one of Tyler's biggest wins of the year, is just like getting us these awesome influencers and ambassadors that range from 4,000 followers to, Mike Tyson. It goes that whole gamut of just like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, different sports. And, we're tracking a lot of that stuff in our post-purchase surveys too, as well. So we track everything through that also.
And Spence, do you have any insight into how Tyler goes about finding like the different influencers?
Honestly, no. We know,
Makes it come to life.
yeah, he finds them somehow. We need to figure it out. I need to ask him after this, but he will bring people to us, to me and the director, and kind of go through like, hey, this is who I want to sign. We go through a budget. This is what the goal would be, the deliverables. We have people that like just fit the brand mold, and then are just right outside the brand mold. But it goes back to kind of like protecting brand, right? You got to make sure you pick people who can still bring diversity, but aren't too far outside of that brand window as well.
Huge. Spencer, we made it around the flywheel. We got to these Q&As. You have any like final words you want to leave with the people?
I would just say there's a lot of money still left to be made in December. Like for us, we had a great Black Friday. We're stoked on it, but like this next week, I would say like, yeah, these next 2 weeks are huge. So
the grind don't stop. The grind don't stop. Everybody, really appreciate your eyes and ears. I hope this has been helpful. Please connect with Spencer on all this good stuff here. Spencer, you're the man. Thanks for coming up here. I'm so happy we got to make this one come to life, man. It's been fun. It's been super fun.
No, thanks a ton. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody. And yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. But yeah, Evan, thanks a ton, dude. It was awesome to come on here and chat.
Most definitely. Most definitely. All right, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day, your week, your year. Crush it. We're all rooting for you. And we're going to talk to you soon, okay? All right, y'all. Catch you later.
Later, guys.
It's time to ship more winning creative with Motion's creative analytics platform that helps you scale winners into unicorns and helps you figure out where your ads might need just a little more help. Join over 2,100 teams shipping winning ads with Motion like Fiori, True Classic, Hexclad, and more. Get a free VIP tour today, and you can see how Motion can help your creative strategists and your media buyers speak the same language.